You there, secure that door. My slaves have brought me to this place. They say it's safe. I have a story to tell you. I've written this account down, or had it written down, so that I might get the full story correct, and you might wish to tell it later. I was a centurion. I commanded a Roman century. That's about 100 Roman soldiers. The discipline and efficiency depend on we centurions. One of our historians, I can't recall his name. Anyway, he said, centurions are not bold or adventurous, but are leaders, steady and prudent of mind. They don't take to the offensive or start fights wantonly. No, we centurions are not paid to be creative. You're paid to follow orders, hold ground, and die rather than surrender. I survived 20 years of campaigning. Gaul, Britain, Germania, and now here in Judea. I rose from ordinary soldier to least centurion, and now to primus pullus. Yes, primus pullus. More than any Latin boy could hope or dream to attain. I was first centurion of the vaunted 10th Legion, executive officer of the chief tribune. My symbol of office is the vitis, or vine staff. This is a poor example. Many centurions are mean, hard, tough guys, like the centurion Lucilius. He used his staff to beat soldiers who he deemed to be lazy or lacking in discipline, beating them bloody, breaking staffs over their backs, and then screaming for another staff to continue the beating. That wasn't very prudent of him, as his troops finally took all they could from him and killed him in a mutiny. Now, I didn't use the staff that way. Well, not very often anyway. I led by example rather than violence. First over the wall, through a gate, or first to charge at the enemy. I think I made primus because, well, I outlived all the other candidates. Every day, though, was not always so exciting. I was also in charge of training and drill, and more drill, and more drill. Plus, I was also the supply officer to the cohort. Boy, that was fun. You know, I also had the duties of executions that were ordered by the procurator. And that's where this story gets really complicated. As you know, Pontius Pilate is the procurator here in Judea. His main palace is on the Mediterranean coast. But at the Passover, he moves to Jerusalem, where he's For there's always trouble with the Jews at Passover. They riot over the cost of sacrificial goats, or there might be a would-be Messiah claiming to be a Jewish king. You put up crosses on Skull Mountain just southeast of the city. The locals call it Golgotha. During Passover, we hung up 3-4 dozen troublemakers. In years past, it was in the hundreds. So this was a slow season. We had thought we were done when we had one more before the Passover Sabbath. One more bloody parade. And then we could get some time off. And then I saw his face. And in a flash, it took me back to Capernaum. Now, as you know, this Judean campaign is very quiet. So I brought my family and servants to Sepphoris, which is about 4 miles west of Nazareth, and so I could be with them while I was on leave. And I'm close to retirement, so I really should get to know my family once again. There's never enough time. Most of the slaves I have are back in Italy working my farms and orchards. We did bring household slaves to Sepphoris. One had been a tutor to me as a child, and he no longer is really a slave, more like a member of the family. Soon after arriving, he became deathly ill, paralyzed and in great distress. There was nothing we could do about it. We were very upset, and seeing how upset, another slave came to me and told me of this fellow Jesus, who was in Capernaum at the time, and all the slaves had heard that he could heal people from all kinds of disease or injury. I had heard things too, so I thought for a moment, and I realized, I had nothing to lose. If my superiors questioned me about it, I could say I was gathering intelligence. After all, they were already suspicious of this fellow from Nazareth, and he was talking about the kingdom of God and such. And the emperor is just interested in anyone mentioning kings other than himself. Well, I found him at a house in Capernaum, and I said to him, "My servant is dying." Jesus was warm and kind and welcoming. Jesus said to me, "Well, I'll come to your home and cure him." Now, I was not prepared for that. I couldn't have this fellow coming to my home. What would my superiors, that would really make them nervous. So thinking quickly, I used a kind of a humility approach. Looking down, I said, "But I'm not worthy to have you come under my roof. Speak the word, and he shall be healed." Can you imagine me? A centurion being so humble to a fellow I could order to be executed on the spot? But the years have taught me gentle words open doors and iron fists cannot. As I waited for his answer, he turned to some of his followers there and was talking about faith, and then he turned back to me, and Jesus said, "Go, let it be done for you according to your faith." That was it. That was that. I shrugged and headed home. As I arrived, my faithful tutor met me with a smile. He was not only alive, but upright and well. As far as I could tell, was well since the moment I had spoke to Jesus. After that, I tried to keep track of Jesus, and I knew that he had recently come to Jerusalem for the Passover, and early in the week he had been in some troubles at the temple, and then he was gone. until that moment, and I saw his face. Jesus had been convicted of treason and sedition against the Roman Empire. And there's only one penalty for those crimes. His final destination was Skull Mountain. We had a standard procedure for would-be kings. We would dress the prisoner up in imitation royal garb. We used red robes so the blood wouldn't show as much. We affixed a thorny crown to their head to add to the pain. An enlisted man applied the lash and jeered, "Hail, hail, your majesty," often spitting upon them or worse. Sometimes I would join in, but not today. They tied him to the post. They beat him till the bones began to show through his tattered skin. After that, he was too weak even to carry his own cross. We forced a fellow in the crowd to carry his cross. Then we crucified him between two others on the hill, Golgotha. I knew what he could do, and I waited for something to happen. For a while, the sky was very dark, and I suspected there might be divine intervention, but mostly, he just died. As he drew his last breath, however, things did begin to happen. There was a bit of an earthquake that shook the hill and rattled the city. There was talk of tombs opening up and the dead walking around. I don't know about those things, but I know something did happen to me. I had watched this man die. Maybe the best man who had ever lived. But I had this feeling that something else, something more, something incredible was happening before our eyes. And I knew we hadn't seen the end of this. And then the words came out of my mouth. Truly, this man is the Son of God. That was it. The end of my military career. And more. Every Roman knows that God has but one son, the emperor. What I said was treason, and I knew it. Before my men could recover from the shock, I dropped my helmet and sword, shed my breastplate and armor, dropped my staff, and melted into the crowd. I sent word for my family to flee, and my slave said I could stay here for a bit and hide it. It's been 3 days since he died. And I hear strange stories. Some say his grave is empty. He's been walking around in Jerusalem. I'm not so sure about those things. They might be true. But whatever has happened, I know this man is God's son. And I need to know more.